Hello and welcome back to the Weird Side. Welcome back to more interviews. We've done it again. We've got another interview. Huzzah! And it's going to be another cracking interview, as always, if I do say so myself. But without further ado, let's get on with our guest today. Our guest is best known for the book series The Vinyl Detective. It's the one and only Andrew Cartmel.
Thank you, Tom. I think it's fair to say in internet land, I may well be better known for my time on Doctor Who, but I'm probably at least as proud of the Vinyl Detective work, if not more.
And so we'll start at the very beginning because it's a good place to start. Because Julie Andrews said that and she's not been wrong since. How did you get into the world of writing?
I've never wanted to do anything else, Tom. Since I began to read and I realized that people wrote books, I always wanted to write. And initially, I always thought about writing books because when you're a kid, you don't really think of anything else. But then later on, I discovered things like television, and I wanted to write for television as well.
And where did the original idea for the Vinyl Detectives come from in the first place?
Well, my friend Ben Aronovich had a very successful series of supernatural, in fact, urban fantasy crime novels called the Rivers of London series. And I was talking to Ben, and he said the secret of writing a successful series is just to write about what you really love. So I wanted to write a crime series, and I thought I might as well write about my personal enthusiasms. I adored music, but particularly listening to it on vinyl. So, and collecting records was quite exciting. That whole area of my life proved to be useful as subject matter for a detective series.
Yeah. And do you think that because of the uptake in more people making vinyl and buying vinyl, do you think that that's also helped with the sales of ebook because people are getting into vinyl, people want to reach out into the world of it in different avenues.
You're right, Tom. It's definitely a very gratifying coincidence that I began writing the books just about the time that vinyl really began to register on the public consciousness as making a big comeback.
Yeah. And why do you think that vinyl in the first place has come back? Do you think it's because people want physical music again, or do you think it's because of the way the music's played and the way it's distributed?
Well, I vinyl definitely sounds better, but I think the reason for its resurgence is, as you say, it's physical. People want a physical object, not just some um, digits on their phone. And although there are other physical media, I mean, there's CDs, which will probably make a comeback, and cassettes, which already have. Vinyl is the most beautiful because partly because it's the biggest. You got a big, gorgeous slab of artwork with it, and also just the object itself, the vinyl itself is quite aesthetically pleasing, and there's sort of the whole ritual of putting it on. I do think that it's all to do with the beauty and satisfaction of that aesthetic, of that, as you say, that physical object. But as it so happens, it also sounds better, so it's great.
And I think that what you can make a connection between vinyl and books is that with the actual vinyl itself, you can make it colored, you can do all sorts. Do you think that changing having it so that each vinyl you collect is different, like a book? Do you think that that's another reason why people buy things because it's you can get them in all different beautiful colors?
Certainly. I mean, it fuels the collector's desire, absolutely, and also it makes it more fun. And it's certainly I try to resist, but I am quite partial to a bit of colored vinyl myself.
Yeah. And when you come to write the books, are you the type of writer that would sit there and listen to music, or are you the one that doesn't need any distraction and just focuses?
I do listen to music. The thing is, I can't always, if it's the music has words and they're in English, they can interfere with the words that I'm typing. So I tend to listen to instrumentals, but some singers are fine if they're singing in any other language, because I'm a fool and don't know any other languages, that's fine. Also, certain jazz singers, because they don't really sing the words, such as the words actually just become beautiful sounds like a jazz instrumental. So that doesn't matter either. But when the words approach the form of conversational words, they definitely get in the way. But I listen to music all the time while I'm writing. In fact, I sometimes get a piece of music or an album that goes so well with what I'm writing that I play it over and over. And when that happens, I try and make a mention in the notes at the end of the book to say what that piece of music was to acknowledge it.
Yeah, and do you think that having that what makes you more creative because you're listening to a piece of thing that's been using creativity? Do you think that helps you to go if they can do it, I can do it?
Well, I think the music helps to put you in the mood. It helps to excite you. It's a pleasant thing to be going on. It does assist in the writing. But my friend Ben, who I mentioned earlier, he actually, I don't know if he still does this, but he used to have playlists of music in particular moods. Like he'd have movie action themes if he was writing an action scene or suspense music. So it can certainly serve that purpose. I'm not quite as organized about it as that, but certainly if I have an exciting piece of music that excites me, that will really help lift my emotions while I'm writing a scene, and that will transfer into the writing and hopefully make the writing exciting to the reader as well.
And one of the things we've worked on is known to the continuity announcer for the drama channel as a British institution, um, even though they use the word classic when they meant the main product itself. But what was it like working on Casualty?
Oh, the thing about Casualty, which was difficult and problematical, was that when I was working on Doctor Who, I just had to get John, who was the producer, to sign off on a script, and that was it. But you see, on Casualty, there was not only a producer, there were various medical advisors. You had a doctor advisor, you had an ambulance advisor, and you had a nursing advisor. And any one of those could cancel a scene or cancel an entire script. For the most part, the ambulance guys and the nursing guys were fine. But the doctor advisor could be a real pain because what would happen is writers would get advice from doctors that they knew, and they would write a script on that basis. And then the resident advisor doctor would deny that such a scenario could ever take place. So that made it. What I'm saying is that it's very difficult. The more people who have a say in the script, the more difficult it becomes. But I mean, that's nothing strange to the way people work now. There's probably, if somebody's doing a TV drama now, you don't just have one producer, you probably have half a dozen producers, associate producers, and executive producers, all of whom can have an influence on the script. And the more cooks there are in the kitchen, the more difficult it is to make a meal.
Yeah, and when working on casualty, not just with the like cases that are depicted in that episode, did you have to watch previous episodes before the one you were writing so that you were definitely sure that the certain characters that are in the whole of that batch?
Okay, so I was the script editor. I didn't actually write any episodes, but what you were saying applies to the right. The thing is, the writers wouldn't see well, they might watch previous series, but they'd be writing for a series where the episodes hadn't been shot yet, mostly, unless they were writing the last episode of the series, in which case the first couple episodes might have been made. But what they would do is they would be given the scripts, they would hopefully read the scripts, and they'd certainly been told, but this whole storyline would be developed in the full knowledge of the continuity of the characters up to that point.
Yeah, yeah. And what are the other pieces of media you've worked on that I would also say now that it's been on for so many years is also an institution in the world of cozy crime and people question why people move to this place all the time. Well, what was it like working on Midsummer Murders?
Midsummer Murder, I loved Midsummer Murders, but it was very frustrating because what happened was I was commissioned to write the script. The script was approved, it was all ready to go. And then the producer got sacked. And when the producer got sacked, everything fell apart. So when I look back on Midsummer Murders, I tend to wince. But I love what I loved about Midsummer Murders was the kind of, well, the thing that everybody else loves about it, the sort of crazy, murderous character of this classic English village and the sort of black humor. And I adored it, but I haven't been able to watch it since because, I mean, that was £250,000 that went bye-bye when that happened. So that was a terribly frustrating thing to happen to a young writer.
Yeah, and and I know it's a fictional place, but why do you reckon that it's lasted so long, and why do you reckon there's still characters that still want to live in this place?
Well, it's just a perfect sort of Agatha Christie type setup, and it can be renewed every week. It's a bit like Doctor Who in the sense that it can just go on forever because there's no kind of it's not really taking place in the real world, is it? It's just taking place in a classic English village of this Miss Marple variety. And when you unmoored from reality like that, and you've got such a basic setup that people love, which is a murder mystery with, other crime genre tropes and also the dark comedy and the eccentric characters. I just think it's a perfect recipe.
Yeah, and I think what works about it is that you know that in real life, if that was a real town, then there'll be a lot more investigation into it than just the police that live there. There'll be more of a wider scope because more people will investigate why there's a murder so often in so many years. And do you think that that's another reason why people love it because they know themselves that it wouldn't be as cozy as it would be in real life?
It's a fantasy, and that's part of its appeal.
Yeah. And what are the things? What are the other things you've worked on that is deemed well, in my eyes, one of the greatest pieces of media of all time? What was it like working on the story, The Time and the Rani?
Time and the Rani was the most difficult story I worked on Doctor Who because I inherited it. And I inherited the writers who were very difficult to work with. So Pip and Jane Baker had developed one episode of a four-part story for John, the producer, and so that he knew that if the show was going to go again because it had been suspended, it was on hiatus. He knew if that it was going to go again, it would go quickly, and he thought that having one script in the bag would give him a head start. It didn't turn out that way, and nothing worked out on that show. However, it had some great actors, including Kate O'Mara. It had fantastic design, and there's a lot of good things about it, including the fact that it introduced Sylvester to the world.
Yeah. And do you think that uh, the story has become more popular because of the Rani returning into recent Who? Do you think that it's made the character more people will love it and more people will come to the older stories because of that?
The Rani was always a great character, and more, credit where it's due. Pip and Jane came up with a winner there.
Yeah. And before you started working on Doctor Who, were you a fan of the show previously? Had you seen it before?
No, I wasn't a fan of the show, but that's not to say I didn't like it. It's just that, I mean, the only show I've ever really been a fan of was The Prisoner. I actually joined the Prisoner fan club. I liked it so much. So I wasn't a fan of Doctor Who, and I didn't watch it, but I had a lot of affection for it. I had some knowledge of it, and I had seen it.
Yeah. And with having seen bits of it, did that help you to understand the sort of tone that you were aiming for
I
with?
absolutely understood the appeal, and I understood its place in the culture. The Daleks, the TARDIS. I understood all that. I mean, when I was growing up, I had a Doctor Who annual, for instance, and I watched some of the very early episodes. So I totally got Doctor Who, which not everybody does. I mean, one of the problems with getting people to write for it is they just couldn't wrap their head around the show.
Yeah. And and on the back of that, you've also worked in one of the I call it the most expensive area in the world of Doctor Who, because there's so much of it, not because one thing's more expensive than the other, but it's because there's a lot of it. What was it like working on the Doctor Who main range Winter of the Adapt?
Winter of the Adept, Winter for the Adept,
The Adapt.
you give it its true title, was a Big Finish audio adventure. And it was one of the very early ones, and it was fun to do. I liked doing it. I worked with Peter Davison. I wrote it I was going to write it as a Sylvester story, but Gary Russell, who was the producer or the script editor, anyway, he was in charge, felt it would challenge me to write for another Doctor. I don't know what value there was in that, but it was fun writing for Peter Davison, and I enjoyed creating that.
Yeah. And was it a different way of working than writing on TV version of the show? Was it a different? Did you have to
It
work it differently?
Sorry, Tom, to interrupt. It might have been the first, I can't remember, but I think no, I was going to say it was the first audio drama I'd written, but I'd actually tried to write some radio scripts before. So it wasn't my first attempt at audio. So I was familiar with that form, but it is very different. And it's quite a pleasure to write all these different formats like television scripts, plays, comics, audio, and novels. They each have their own particular distinctive nature, and it's fun to move from one to the other.
So when writing on for audio, does that help to give you more of scope because you can do more because you don't have to worry much about the bigger budget. There is a budget still there, but not as big a budget, so you can do more bigger things than you would do on
Well, it's
TV.
absolutely true that you do have an unlimited budget in effect on audio, which is exciting. But the way that it frees the writer up is different from that because it just frees up the imagination because you are able to get inside people's heads
Yeah,
in a very kind of direct way. You can do that with a novel as well, too, but this is different. And there's an intimacy to the audio format, which is very distinctive and it's really quite exciting to write. So there are great dividends to writing on in audio, but it's not just about doing more spectacular things. You can do more minute and intricate and intimate things as well.
yeah. And do you think that do you think having audio drama being this immersive world, do you think that helped to sort of show people that audio is just as adventurous, just as amazing as TV or as books?
Well, I think it does, but I don't think it was just Big Finish that does that. I mean, BBC Radio has for decades, for almost a century now, they've been transmitting the most wonderful drama. And I think that really shows people what radio drama is capable of. But of course, in the early part of the century, all over America, there was a thriving, fantastic, booming um, market and world of radio adventures and dramas and mysteries. It was just fantastic. I mean, Orson Welles got his start both in the physical theater and in the theater of the radio.
Yeah. And why do you think that drama as a genre is more popular now than it has been ever?
It's true that certainly on television, drama is really booming. I think that it involves people in a way that other things just can't, that documentaries or reality shows or comedy simply can't. There's something, and that's why soap operas are so popular, because they're human dramas that get under people's skin.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is right, and people can get to know characters and feel like they're friends, and you can go on these mystical adventures and have things happen to characters that you wouldn't necessarily have thought you would have seen in regular life, and you think that that's why people fall in love with the characters more than, as well as the show because they can feel like they're friends with them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And one of the other things you've worked on that was interesting and was made for Channel 5 is what was it like working on Dark Knight?
Dark Knight is hilarious because, of course, people think Batman when they hear Dark Knight. But Dark Knight, the show that I worked on, which ran for 2 seasons, was a sword and sorcery show about the adventures of Ivanhoe, who was indeed a knight.
Yeah,
And it was filmed in New Zealand around the time that they're making the Lord of the Rings movies. And it was a bit like a really kind of low budget version of something like Lord of the Rings because it had sorcery and magic and sword fights and dragons. And it was a great deal of fun. And it had some very talented actors and writers and designers working on it. I hired Ben Aronovich to write for it. There was a very fine writer called Phil O'Shea who I met on the show. It was uh, it was a great deal of fun, and it's a real shame that it didn't continue because it could have continued. It was sort of made in New Zealand in the wake of a miniature boom there, which was, I think, started by Xena the Warrior Princess.
yeah. And why do you think that New Zealand is the ideal place for fantasy and more of the mystical stuff?
Well, great weather, beautiful locations with all different kinds of um, geography, and also I think the financially I think it was a really good deal to shoot there. I think that you got a big bang for your buck.
Yeah,
So I think all those things can, and of course, once they started making things there, New Zealand acquired a local filmmaking industry, and of course, Pete Jackson's developed his little empire there. So it's a great place to go to shoot.
yeah. And in New Zealand you can see that all the hills and all the vast majority of a lot of other programs are merged over there because you can have all these bigger landscapes and you can have in
Yeah,
certain places. I
it's
know that
gorgeous.
the UK has a lot of quarries and we can use quarries to make them more magical, but I think that New Zealand has a lot more to offer than a quarry that might have been used for different times on the
Yeah, and also the sun is shining because there are other places in the world that have beautiful scenery, but you don't get enough sunshine.
And why do you reckon that in the UK specifically, why do you think that there's so much love for fantasy and magic and wizardry?
I don't know it's just the UK, but in the UK we've got a rich history of that, don't we? I mean, everything from King Arthur to Robin Hood, and we've had, I suppose, the greatest writers in the genre, such as Tolkien,
Yeah,
come from here.
yeah. And do you think that the reason why there was a time where a lot of shows developed the idea of like shoes magic and became popular? Do you think that's because of the renewed love for magic, and or do you think it's because we've got a lot of landscapes that producers and TV executives thought would work in fantasy?
I think that a lot of it is attributable to Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. Again, another great British writer.
Yeah. And why do you think that the show didn't make it to a third series? Do you think it's because of it was expensive? Do you think you might?
No, the reason Dark Knight didn't get a third series is because, a bit like Doctor Who, the the broadcaster just regarded it with contempt. It was a very successful show in a little way. It was a small show that was a small success, and it could have gone on being a success on that level for years and years and years. But they hated it because they didn't think it was serious drama. They hated the whole notion of dragons and wizards and stuff. And so what they did is they kept moving it around in the schedule, in the time that it was broadcast, and it worked almost everywhere until they finally found a slot. I think it was Sunday morning where nobody would watch it, and then they could say, "Oh, look, nobody's watching," and they cancelled it. It's terrible, but I mean, they did the same thing with Doctor Who. They moved around the schedule, and they hated it, and they eventually managed to kill it.
Yeah. And do you think that having moving the show in its schedule, do you think that damages the show because the viewers that were in love with it can't find it?
They did, although these days, of course, with streaming and people watching on demand and box sets that you download instantly, all that has changed. But back in those days, people had to know when something was going on, and it had to be a regular thing. And also, it had to be carefully planned what it was going out against. For instance, they put us up against Coronation Street. But as I say, these days that has all changed. But back when we were talking about Tom, that is exactly correct. You're right.
Yeah. And do you think that that's the issue when they try and say, oh yeah, let's put it on at this time because people are going to be watching Coronation Street to find out what Ethel's up to or whatever. Do you think that makes it a lot harder for you to try and sell the show because you know as a yourself that people might be watching Coronation Street more than your work?
Well, the reason Michael Gray did that was partly because he hated the show, but also partly because it was kind of indestructible. Because anything you put up against Coronation Street was doomed. But in a way, Doctor Who fared better than most because it always would draw its audience to it. So it was, if you're going to sacrifice something, at least Doctor Who would always hold a certain audience.
Yeah. And one of the other things that you worked on was a brilliant short film from 2016. What was it like working on The Iron Woman?
Well, I think there's some confusion here, Tom. I didn't work on a short film called The Iron Woman.
All right. Well, I think there must be someone else was the same name because
No, no, I think what this might be, Tom, forgive me, but I wrote a short audition
yeah,
piece for Sylvester McCoy
yeah,
in which he met a woman, a nemesis called the Iron Woman, and that was shot for his audition. Could that be what the confusion is?
it could be because IMDb claim it to be a short film.
The Iron Woman. Do they say what it's about?
Well, from looking at it, uh, it does it well it just says it does say it's an audition piece. It just doesn't make it very clear when you look at it. It just says short, but then when you actually press into it, then gives you the full detail.
Does it say audition piece when you do that?
Yes. After
Okay.
you press into it, it just doesn't make
Yeah,
it
well,
clear.
that's that. Your confusion is understandable. It's not very helpful, but it's nice of them to credit me with that. I wrote two audition pieces where various actors who were going to play the Doctor came in and they did their bit.
Yes.
And that was one, and the other one was when he's saying goodbye to his companions. It's the Days Like Crazy Paving one, and they were very good, and I'm very proud of them. And in fact, just to give a plug here, if anybody's interested in those, they can buy my book script or get it from the library, my book Script Doctor, which contains the scripts for those two short films.
Yeah. And do you think that writing for them, writing those helps you to, it gives you a little boost of, oh yeah, this is something interesting. Do you think it sort of helps you to come up with original ideas because you know it's not going to be on TV, you know it's who it's for?
Well, it's not really like that. What it is you need to come up with something to test these actors so that it's written for a specific purpose. So that's, I mean, it does have that effect that you said that it sort of develops your skills. But the reason it's written is specifically for the purpose because you booked a bunch of actors who are going to be here at 7 o'clock and you've booked a small studio and a cameraman and a sound crew and you're going to record them and you need something for them to act in. So
Yeah.
that was what it was written for. And they were written very quickly, but they were very well received, and John was very pleased with them.
Yeah, and we've got to this point in the interview where people are watching. What advice would you give someone that might be watching this now who might want to get into the world of writing, not just for TV, but writing in general?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I do get asked that quite a lot, and I do have some specific advice. Right, so I'll quickly run through that for you. Okay, so here's a quote from one of my favorite writers of all time. His name is John D. MacDonald, and he's a crime writer. He said, "Story is something happening to someone you've been led to care about." And the important thing for me there is the words led to. It's the writer's job to make you care about characters, right? And so here's, right. So what else can I tell you? Another quote. This is from a guy called J.P. Donlevy. He said, "Writing is turning your worst moments into money." Somebody else said, "An unhappy childhood is a writer's gold mine." These are my own comments now. Rewriting is easier than writing. So that's very important. So once you get, if you're having trouble getting started, just get something down, anything down, even if you change it completely, because rewriting will be easier than that first thing. So remember that. Um, Always obey your impulses. This is something that took me a long time to learn. I used to overthink things. But if something comes, if just an idea jumps into your mind, always follow it. Always follow your first impulse and see where it goes. That can be very valuable. Right. So let's see what else. Oh, yeah. Here's a piece of very practical advice. If you're writing prose, never use three names in one sentence. It's too confusing. Nobody will ever understand that. Louis Buñuel, the famous film director, said, "The imagination is a muscle." And that was a crucial thing for me. I hadn't realized that. But what that means is that you exercise it. So if you want to be a good writer, start writing, start coming up with stories, and you will get better. That's an important thing to know. Again, John D. MacDonald, he said, "Writing is the classic example of learning by doing." So you've got to do that. Right. Here's a piece of very practical advice. When you're submitting your piece of writing, keep your covering letter or email really short. There's going to be a temptation to go on and on about who you are and what you've written and why that people should like it. Don't do that. Just say, "Here's my thing," with the title, and say, "I hope you like it." That really is not. Now, the busy people you're sending it to will appreciate that. Here's another thing I find really useful. Do a rough plan of whatever you're writing with a total page count in mind, right? So if you're writing a feature film, it's going to be about 100 pages. If you're writing a 60-minute TV script, it'll be about 60 pages. Write down the number of pages and then come up with what I call a page budget, which means create a storyline, then go through and figure out how many pages you're going to assign to each part of your storyline. And if you're doing a feature film and you've gone over 100 pages, you know you're in trouble. It also helps you decide what are the important bits of your story that you're going to devote more time to, more space to. This is really important because a lot of writers, they just start writing and they'll do a scene that goes on and they'll blow their budget. Like there's no way they're going to hit 100 pages if they're writing a feature film. It's just really useful to do that, to create that storyline, to assign various page lengths. You don't have to stick exactly to it, but it'll tell you if you go wildly off target.
Mm.
Another useful thing, um, choose interesting and memorable names for a character. I find that a good name for a character is half the battle. And just lastly, a lot of writing advice is to come up with biographies for your characters, often quite detailed biographies. If that works for you, great. For me, it never works because what it does is it sort of kills the character stone dead because I don't know, the biography just seems very dull to me. What I need to do is I need to have that character in action somehow. The way I bring a character to life is just I get them to say some lines of dialogue, which not perhaps, but definitely reveal their character. If they can just say something in character, maybe they're whiny, maybe they're greedy, maybe they're boastful, maybe they're generous or kind. Just get some dialogue out that begins to reveal the character, and that'll help create the character, I think, better than writing some kind of imaginary biography does. That's my advice.
And when you write some more of your own original works and you have to come up with character, is that coming up with a name for the character? Do you think that's the hardest thing to do because there's so many books out there with so many with loads of names already?
It's not that hard, but it's very important. There's a distinction there. What I do is I now keep lists of names. Whenever I see an interesting name anywhere, even if it's just a place name, I'll write it down as a possible character name. And then so when I've got a character, I start to develop a story. I've got some characters, and I go through my list of names and I give them names. And usually they're surnames. And then what I do, what you're referring to is about, you don't want to use names that have been used. So I give a character a surname, then I choose a first name for them. And then at some point I'll Google that name combination, like John Smith. That's one that won't work. But you look online if there's loads of real people or fictional characters, if there's any of them with the same name, you regretfully drop that name and find another one.
Yeah, and I think that because there's so much in the world of not just media but a lot, it then becomes harder because then if you think of something that it might sound unique and then you Google it, that's the bit that disheartens you because it's like you were really proud of this unique thing. Do you think that happens more often than a lot of people would think?
I think it's very easy to get attached to a name, and you can be very disappointed if you can't use it. So it's important to check at quite an early stage.
Yeah. And what are the other what I would say memorable in a sense of a lot of people remember it, and even right now thinking about it, I can picture it vividly. But that might just be because it's me. But well, what was it like working on the story Battlefield?
Well, it was great because I was working with Ben Aronovich, who was the most natural Doctor Who writer that I worked with in my time on the show. And Ben and I had already done one story together, his fantastic story, Remembrance of the Daleks. And it was great to get him back and get him to do another one. I know that he doesn't love Battlefield the way he loves Remembrance, but there's so many great things in it. And also, what a great cast.
Yeah. And do you think that it it helped with having the box set, the collection box set? Do you think having those in and utilizing some of the original like film reels, and the term might have escaped me there. So that was the
All
best.
those supplements and all those missing scenes and all those extras are really valuable, and it's great to have them. I really, really appreciate that. In particular, um, the Happiness Patrol has been utterly transformed, and I'm very grateful to the people who did that.
And do you think that that's what helps to showcase how beautiful and how brilliantly Classic Who is sort of formed together, having a chance for audiences that might have not wanted to watch it before, but having this way of watching it, do you think that helps to bring back the love of classic Doctor Who?
Well, audiences are getting the first chance to see some of this because scripts were often too long and too much material was shot. And so they had to be edited down so people didn't see everything that we made. And sometimes that destroyed a story. And now, for the first time, audiences are able to see things the way they're intended to be, which is fantastic. And I don't know if that will be the crucial thing in making people love old Who, but it's certainly going to help.
Yeah, and do you think that when you see the reaction to the fans once you've seen these, does that bring you joy that you now know that a whole new generation are loving your work?
Well, the new generation and the old generation, because people who had seen the Happiness Patrol at the time didn't like it, but they didn't see the proper thing. So both new and old audiences are getting a chance to see these
Yeah,
and to love them.
yeah, and I think that's what I think from a from an insider perspective of knowing a lot about Doctor, and I think that having these box sets shows these people that might have been skeptical of it says, well, if you watch this version, you'll see it for the joy, for the pure amazingness it is, because it's a lot more cleaner as well, so that it's more up to date. Do you think that's another aspect because it's more of a cleaner image than it would have been when it was first
I
broadcast?
think it helps, but I think some people will never like Doctor Who, and that's fine.
Yeah,
Not everybody should, but it's certainly giving the shows their best possible chance to get across and for people to love them.
yeah. And one of the other stories that I would also say is as brilliant as Battlefield. What was it like working on the greatest show in the galaxy?
Well, it was wonderful. Again, I'm going to mention my book, Script Doctor, because it will tell you this behind the scenes story. But at that time, that show almost didn't happen because they had to close down the television studios because they'd found asbestos in them and they felt they were unsafe to work in. But John Nathan Turner, the producer, worked a fantastic workaround where we could shoot somewhere else out at Elstree. And so it's wonderful the show ever happened. But the great thing about that show is that Stephen Wyatt had written this script, which was a wonderful script, but it was beautifully interpreted by the director Alan Waring. You, because a director can make or destroy a script, and Alan did a wonderful job on that with his supreme cast, including people like Jessica Martin, who's a very good friend of mine now, but I met her on that as part of an enormously um, talented and diverse cast, and it was just also beautifully photographed. It's one of the ones that really came together beautifully.
Yeah. And when you're working in the world of Big Finish and audio in general, are you the type of writer that would go along to the recording session just in case you need it, or if you or just to see how your words are being interpreted, or are you the one that waits until it comes out?
I think all writers attend the recording sessions, and so they should. And they're really exciting and fun to do.
Yeah. And do you think you learn more about how your script is being interpreted when you see it be performed by the actors themselves?
Well, yes, and you also learn a lot about how production works, how they actually make an audio story.
Yeah. And do you also think that it helps improve your writing because you then know if you get to write for that person again, you know that they say that line, they'll say it like this, and you'll know for next time to sort of make sure that they can do it that way if they wanted to.
Yes, and obviously not just in audio, in any form of drama where that involves actors, you do that. You're very perceptive, Tom. That is exactly what happens.
Yeah. And when writing for the stage, do you when the thing's out there and being performed, do you go along and watch it?
I go along as often as I can. I had a show that was on at a theatre quite near where I live. Like it was just a nice, lovely 15-minute walk through some woods to get there. So I went every night. I think I might have missed one. But if it's on the other side of town, you sort of try and go on the important nights. Obviously, you go on opening night, closing night. Some night that you might have important people in the audience, or you might have friends in the audience. So you try and attend those. But I like to go as often as possible,
Yeah.
really. Not least because I'm usually the guy who's bankrolling the show.
Yeah. And do you like the compared to TV and radio with theatre? Do you like the aspect of you can see what how the audience are reacting to the show right now rather than in 3 or 4 months' time?
Yes, it's very exciting, but that's the unique thing about drama is that it's actually happening right now, right here, with live people on both sides of the stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you like the fact that when you watch it being performed, do, does that give you joy because you're watching your work and you're watching the audience watching it as well as you watching it
Yes.
in an audio?
Again, you're very perceptive, Tom. That's exactly what it does.
Yeah. And with plays, do you go along to the rehearsals as well, or do you just
Yes,
watch
yeah,
them?
absolutely. And rehearsals, it can be a joy to go to rehearsals, and it can also get a bit boring. But the important thing with rehearsals is not to go too much because the actors don't want, it's a bit like having mum and dad there all the time. So the thing to do with rehearsals is to let the director tell you when she wants you there or when he wants you there and how, obviously you've got to be there at certain crucial times. And it is important. Like sometimes the actors and the director begin to change the script, and sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. But if they've started to change it in a way you don't like, you don't want that the actors to get too accustomed to that. You don't want them to um, get that fixed in their heads. So that it's important to attend a certain amount. And it's a great pleasure. But as I say, you don't want to be there so much that you inhibit the actors.
Yeah, and do you think that it helps you to know that it's in the right capable hand when you don't turn up because you saw the last rehearsal and you knew it was going really well?
Yes, and but you sort of know that once you've got the good actors and a good director, you sort of know you're in safe hands from that point on.
Yeah, and do you think that's important with all drama? It's having the right people saying your words.
It's absolutely crucial.
Yeah. And so, as we come towards the end of this glorious, lovely, amazing, excellent, so many other words, but the dictionary's not been eaten yet because I got bored of it. It's like lettuce, get bored of it quite easily. What upcoming projects that you're allowed to talk about that you're excited for people to see, hear, or read
When will this go out, Tom?
today?
Oh, well, in that case, allow me to tell you that I have a play coming on. It's on 3 nights in October. I'm just checking the dates. The reason I'm sort of gibbering a bit is I just want to make sure I get the dates right. It's okay. So in London, there's this thing called the Grimm Fest, which is a Halloween festival of spooky plays. Okay, and my play called Honeymoon Enchantress has been accepted for that, and um, there's going to be 3 performances, and I'm just checking the date. Okay, the dates are Friday the 17th of October, Saturday the 18th, and Sunday the 19th of October at 7 p.m. at Grimfest, as I said, it's sort of this spooky play festival at the Old Red Lion Theatre. So that's the most important thing to tell people about. If they like scary stuff, please come along. It'll be very. I mean, I know the cast we've got; they're amazing and a really good director, and I know the play too quite well. And it's a friend of mine compared it to Ira Levin, who wrote Rosemary's Baby. So that might give you some idea of the kind of material that it is. So please come along to that. That's the most important thing. There may well be another play this year or early next year, but we don't have the dates or the details yet, so I can't recommend. I mean, I can recommend that. It's a revival of my comedy Dressing Gown, but we don't know the exact details. I'd also like to mention my book, the paperback. You've talked about The Vinyl Detective, which is a crime series, all right. I also write a second crime series about the paperback sleuth, about this crazy young lady who collects vintage paperbacks. And the new novel in that series, the third novel in that series called Like a Bullet, has literally just been published. So please do check that out. And just as a little mystery spoiler, um, there is a I've created a third crime series, and my agent has just sent the books out to various editors, and we're just waiting to hear back. So keep your fingers crossed. But there may be a third crime series from Andrew Cartmel coming out soon.
Oh, and and why do you think, and you see it, why do you think that in novel form crime has become like more popular than I think it's ever been?
Well, it's always been an amazingly popular genre. People love stories that frighten them and that are transgressive and are realistic. Some people don't like science fiction or horror or fantasy. Lots of people do, but I think everybody loves a realistic, scary story. Almost everyone. So certainly, crime doesn't have that problem about it because it does seem very real world, even if it's sort of Midsummer Murders, which is utterly fantastical, but it seems to reside in reality. So it's realistic, it's scary, it's exciting, it's transgressive, and often, I mean, it has the thrill element,
Mm,
you know.
yeah,
It can have the suspense element, and it can also have the mystery element, like the puzzle element, all of those things. And also, it can be funny, like my books are funny as well as all that. Crime is a really great genre, and I suppose the basic thing is that unlike a lot of genres, unlike literature,
yeah,
great books of the world, they can often be rather dull or, quite interesting, but they don't have an essential drive to them. The thing about crime fiction is it's always got this engine in it that's driving it forward and makes it very interesting because you want to know who solved the crime, or you want to know whether somebody's going to get killed, or if somebody has been killed, if they got killed, or if somebody's a robber, you want to know if they want to get away with it. You want to know what happens in a very compelling way. I think that's the essence of why crime is successful.
and I think that I can't, and you probably know more than me on this, but I think there's a lot. of ways you can use crimes. You can have your gritty thriller crimes,
Yeah,
or you can have your whimsical 2 p.m. Shakespeare Hathaway cozy crimes. Do you think that that's why crime's popular because you can merge it with any other genre?
I think it would be popular anyway, but that helps that it can be so diverse, certainly.
Yeah. And do you think not only that people have the chance to read the books and can absorb it with their own brain and choose how they want the characters to read, do you think it also helps when you have the audio books so that you can immerse yourself in that world in a new way that you wouldn't have thought of interpreting it?
It certainly does help the audiobooks. It's fascinating because I've got a lot of people who are enthusiasts for my crime novels, but some of them are definitely want to read the physical book and some definitely want the audiobook. And it might be because they consume their books when they're commuting, which is, they're like they're driving or something, or they're out walking and they like to listen to them. But some people just like an audiobook, even if they're not on the go. They just would prefer to absorb the story in that manner. And it's really interesting that people tend to fall into these two categories. And it's wonderful that they like my books either way.
Yeah. And in from my opinion, when you listen to the audio, but you sort of interpret it from what the reader's doing. So the way the narrator's playing it, you know that if you read it, you might interpret that scene differently, but you get to enjoy it from their eyes, their ears, their mouths. You get to how they think it should be interpreted, and I think that that sort of enhances it. Do you would you tend to agree that it would help to enhance when you can interpret how someone else would feel about it?
Well, again, it's actors. The good narrators of books are all actors. So it's again a performance, and it's having your work interpreted by a good actor.
And so, that is the perfect note to end on. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Oh, you're welcome, Tom. Thank you very much.
And thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I forgot.